And I'm here to talk to you. Well, actually, no, let me start. Hi, my name is Rumi Nagpal. I'm a lower sixth student at Elizabeth Moy School. And I'm here to talk to you about how the ultimate test of any technology lies in how it can benefit the worst off in any society. Let me explain this with an example I've been working on. So Sri Lanka's had a pretty tough 4 years. I recall I was 13, batting on 4 not out. When my coach, Rishen sir, he called us in, he's come in, and I was a bit confused. The Easter attacks had just happened. The Easter attacks dealt a critical blow to our country's morale, our tourism, and subsequently our economy. Barely had we recovered from that when COVID hit. And as soon as we emerged from the pandemic, we found our country bankrupt, government ineffectual, and inflation rampant. Not an easy 4 years for a 13-year-old, you may say. But it gave me a lot of time with myself, my computer, and an obsessive desire to connect with the world outside the 4 walls of my room on an island that I call home. One of the main impacts of COVID was how it accelerated the use of new technology. Governments needed to work, humans needed to connect, businesses needed to transact, exchange, trade. But people couldn't meet, they couldn't shake hands. So technology became the ubiquitous, the universal language of transaction. We watched how people of all generations began to adopt new technology. My grandfather, for one, started ordering his butter chicken and naan online. And my grandma stopped, going to the bank to, write out checks. She'd just make them online. Although this was all, revolutionary, I thought about how we could use technology to make an impact on the worst off. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't do that, then it eventually becomes irrelevant. So, when anyone mentions blockchain, blockchain, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? I'd like to actually open this to the audience. So, anyone who's heard of the word blockchain, just raise your hand and tell me what the first thing that comes to your mind is. Anyone wants to raise their hand? Well, fantastic. So, usually, the first thing that comes to your mind is crypto, all right? It's the controversial, volatile, and oft-rebunked store of value, crypto. Or in this case, Bitcoin. But for me, when I look out at the vast span of technologies that's changing our world, I see that blockchain at its core has some great democratic, fair, universal, affordable features that can be used to help people escape from the cycle of poverty. Now, from the window of my room, all right, I can see a property. It's 10 perches. It's completely locked up. This is actually a photo of it. It's completely locked up. A person comes in twice a year to clear the growth and maintain things, But it's locked up. It's like my own enchanted garden. So naturally, as any curious 10-year-old does, I walk up to my parents and I'm like, look, what's going on here? Why is there no one here? And they turn around and say, look, the property's actually locked in family dispute. It's locked up. So I turned around like any 10-year-old would do and said, what's going on? I don't understand what you're saying. And they described it as if it was some sort of animate object. And 3 years later, I asked my father, what's going on here? And he said, look, the land titles are damaged. Ownership is uncertain, so nothing can be done with the land. So I said, ownership's uncertain? Huh? Does it make sense? So I said, show me the land titles, please. I'd like to have a look at them. So he asked a neighbor's friend, the friend's friend, and we finally got the land titles. And so another COVID Sunday rolled around, and I was looking through the land titles. And I realized that this property was actually worth a rather vast sum of money. So surely it was such a shame that nothing could be done with this property. Since ownership was uncertain. That's the same summer I was introduced to blockchain. All right, at first it At first, it started with my friend running up to me saying, yo, Rumi, bro, like, you gotta listen, man. Like, crypto, bro, like, bro, it just, like, it never slows down, bro. Naturally, I didn't listen to his advice. But for me, the fascination lay elsewhere. I was absolutely fascinated with the technology that crypto ran on, blockchain. I found that blockchain was, in essence, a secure filing cabinet, one in which files are kept, transferred, and linked in a manner that is secure and organized, accessible, and tamper-proof. So now imagine, for a moment, that my neighbor, who's been suffering from repeated business and family casualties, was somehow able to borrow against his property or sell his property. Imagine if the whole process of inheritance was made just that bit easier. Imagine now how many such properties lie up in courts or registrars where people can do nothing about them. Have any of you ever, gone to the Registrar General's office and said, right, I'm going to find my land title? Have any of you done that? Just a show of hands, if you've actually gone and seen your land title. Yeah, no one. That's what I thought. The reason is because, right, you have two options. Either you say, right, I'm going to get a lawyer to do it. The lawyer's going to charge you tens and tens and tens of thousands of rupees per hour while they're just sitting, drinking tea and reading their newspaper, etc. Or you can, say, right, I'm an independent person. I'm, capable of doing this myself. I do it myself. Walk in and they turn around and say, hello. Right, so there are 3 huge files, 1, 2, 3. Your land title is somewhere there. There are thousands of land titles here, there, everywhere. It could take you 3 years, right? That's actually the average time it takes to find a land title, 2 to 3 years. This asset is yours. This asset is usually the most important in a family. Is it secure? No. I mean, you can't even find it, but it could get damaged, caught in a fire, etc. It's not secure at all. Can it be transferred easily? Well, I mean, it can't be transferred if you can't find it, so we'll leave that question alone. Would a bank look at it and say, right, fantastic, here's your land title. We can confirm that this is the original. They can't do that either, because that could be a fake. How are they supposed to know that that's the original? To do that, they'd have to go themselves to the land registry and then look through all of the land titles and can confirm that there are no duplicates. We see there's an issue here. Ladies and gentlemen, Sri Lanka ranked 138 for ease of registering property on the World Bank Doing Business Report 2020. 138, ladies and gentlemen, 138. But now, imagine if this whole system was on a blockchain platform. Here's how it's going to work. All right, so let's say my neighbor's father, let's call him what? Can the audience shout out a name? What should we call my hypothetical neighbor's father? Shout out a name. Come on, guys, tell me a name. What should we call him? Someone? Okay, let's call him Mr. Siripala, okay? So Mr. Siripala, he wants to access his property through a hybrid blockchain system. A hybrid blockchain system is a combination of a private blockchain and a public blockchain. All right, I'm going to explain this in a second. But let's say Mr. Siripala wants to access his property through a hybrid blockchain system. What's Mr. Siripala going to do? He's going to open his computer or phone or whatever and access a link. Once he does this, he enters a public blockchain. He does this through, well, I mean, you first have to go through a number of firewalls, security measures, etc., but that's all irrelevant. The point is that he gets into this public blockchain. Now, this public blockchain is accessible to everyone in this room, all right? Everyone in this room has access to this public blockchain. Now, what you see in this public blockchain is every single property on the island, all right? You see its coordinates and its hash key protection sequence. All right, so hash key protection, all right, I'm going to explain it very briefly now, and then I'm going to move on to it later. But imagine, all right, if I have a block, like right here, all right? Everyone visualize a block right here. Now, if one of the audience members told me 10 digits, all right, and I put 10 digits and wrote it on the block. And then I jumbled those digits to create a new sequence. That sequence is now attached to the block. All right? Just think of hash keys like that. I'll explain them in a bit. You can also see the coordinates. But to respect poor old Siripala's privacy, right, we've got to make sure that the public doesn't know that that's his property, right? Because that goes against privacy laws. You can't know that. And therefore, here we have a private blockchain. This is where the private blockchain thing comes into play. Now, I want everyone in the audience to close their eyes. All right, everyone close your eyes. All right, bet. Everyone close your eyes, and now think. You open your computer. You enter a public blockchain, and you just see a bunch of blocks lined up. On each block, you see a hash key, so that's just a number, 10 digits, and you also see the coordinates of the property. Both north and whatever, west or whatever it is. You see the coordinates, right? Okay, cool. But you can't enter that block because you can't know who owns that property. So the only people who can enter that block are the property holder, the government, monitors. Basically, monitors are people who work for the government. They're employed by the government, basically manage the system. White hat hackers, who are basically good hackers. And optionally, banks. Banks can also access this private blockchain. That's on demand of the property holder, because that's only if they want to use their land as collateral. Okay, cool. So once Siripala enters his private blockchain, he sees that. That's a private blockchain. Everyone look at that. All right, that's a private blockchain. Siripala enters this private blockchain, and in the Genesis block, okay, is stored Siripala's land title, because he's the first owner, Siripala's land title in the Genesis block, along with his birth certificate and other documents required by the Registrar General's office. Now, let's say Siripala wanted to transfer property to his daughter. What Siripala does is basically, once he dies, the daughter's birth certificate, along with the new land title, reissued with the new signatures, will be uploaded to block 2. Let's say the daughter wants to sell their property. They will proceed to sell it to, let's say, Mr. X. All right, Mr. X purchases the property. His birth certificate is put in block 3 along with the new land title, and it sort of forms this chain. All right, everyone with me? Okay? Yeah, everyone got? Good? Okay, cool. So that's a blockchain. Now, so I've already explained to you how the storage system works and how you access your title, all right, through a series of firewalls and security and whatnot. But how is this protected? This is the interesting stuff, and this is where I bring you back to hash keys. Let's say I'm a hacker, all right? I'm this awful hacker, and I say, right, I'm going to steal data from block 2. Okay, great. So I walk into the public blockchain, which everyone can do, and then I somehow manage to get through the repeated firewalls and get through to the private blockchain. As soon as I open the block, so imagine I'm actually opening the block, and I open the block, and as soon as I grab the data, the hash key jumbles. All right, this is really important. The hash key jumbles, which means that the hash of block 2 will not match the hash of the Genesis block. You see that? Okay, so because it doesn't match, here's what happens. White hat hackers get alerted. They basically come onto the private blockchain. They destroy the private blockchain and re-upload a new one, basically from the numerous backup servers. And then the hackers are identified. Why are the hackers identified? Because when they enter the public blockchain, their identity is disclosed. So everyone knows who they are. And therefore, we leave that to the police and whatnot. The thing is, right, everything's great here. There's just one issue. You have to trust the government. Because if you don't trust if the government messes up and the government decides to, destroy someone's evidence of property or, political opponent, etc., they can do that. Or so you think. So here's where you come into the picture. Remember when I told you earlier that you can access the hash keys of the public blockchains? Right. So you can do this yourself. You yourself can go and check that all the hash keys match. You yourself can monitor the government and keep them accountable. And that's the beauty of blockchain. Everybody is kept accountable, the people and the government. So, no, wait, I'll switch back to that later. Now, on to the point about dead capital, all right? So dead capital is a term used by Peruvian social scientist Hernando de Soto. And he essentially explains that if governments were to secure and ensure the property rights of small businessmen and landowners, they would see exponential economic growth, all right? He explains that small businessmen are reluctant to invest in their businesses because they're unsure of the security of their land title. Why are they unsure? Because if their land title is damaged or, lost or whatever, the government can swoop in and take their land, take their business and say, look, you don't have proof that this is your land title, that this is your land, that this is your business, and thus we can proceed to take it. Corrupt politicians might come in and show him a fake and say, look, this is actually my land, but he has nothing to counter that with. He doesn't have the original. So there goes his property and his business. So it's important that land titles are not contested, and thus, and cannot be faked, because then small businessmen can take loans against their property far easier. They subsequently use this loan to invest in their business. After they invest in their business, this will contribute to economic growth. Furthermore, it's really important that land titles are clean and checked by the Registrar General's office, because this ensures that banks can lend billions more to firms and households, which increases income and employment. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that 75% of one of Sri Lanka's main sectors, tourism, is run by small businesses, small and medium businesses. Now imagine if banks had a way to lend to them. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions here, all right? So I'm going to preempt a couple, and yeah, hopefully they're correct. So the first is this legal? So legality is about laws, and laws are passed by the government. So why would the government want this? Well, the first is economic growth, but there are 4 other reasons why. The first is that they retain oversight. They are made aware of all transactions. It's their system, they run it. And if they're made aware of all transactions, taxes are easier to regulate, because you're made aware of all transactions and you know the value of all the deals. Secondly, can criminals take advantage of this? I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that criminals are not even going to try. I'm not going to come and tell you that. I'd be lying. Criminals will try everything. But the thing is that it's impossible to make large transfers of money on this blockchain system without alerting the government or white hat hackers. Furthermore, when you enter the blockchain system, you are disclosing your identity, and therefore, criminals are disincentivized to use it because they don't want the government knowing who they are or where they are. All right. Third thing, just quickly to add to that, if you compare that to status quo, and you compare that to the amount of criminal activity that currently exists in the land registry, with regard to small bribes, etc., we see there's a definite decrease in criminal activity on this platform. Finally, how do you encourage adoption? Now, I'm sure many of you are skeptical of blockchain and crypto and all of that kind of stuff. So how do you encourage adoption? Because if people are skeptical, then they're not going to use it. Right? It's a pretty simple equation. Here's how you do it. There are 2 ways you do it. The first is the long-term solution, and that's education, which will eventually lead to the gradual acceptance of the fact that blockchain doesn't always equate to crypto. Blockchain can be used for the public good. The second solution is a more short-term solution, where you encourage banks and insurers to step in and incentivize people to use the system as they benefit as much as the user does. The government can also reduce stamp duty charges and reduce taxes on activity within the blockchain system. So, this country, all right, Georgia, added hash keys to 1.5 million land titles in an effort to increase transparency and reduce corruption. What happened? Georgia ranked 5th out of 190 nations for ease of registering property. Ladies and gentlemen, Sri Lanka ranked 138. In Ghana, there are plans to digitize land titles and put them on a blockchain server with the help of a Canadian company. And this is to reduce fraud and make mortgage lending easier and faster. For most of us, blockchain has been eternally connected to crypto, which in reality is just a speculative instrument for the rich and privileged. But that's hardly the fault of the technology. It is because working for the public good is so difficult, because the externalities and benefits are so great that only the government can pay for them. But as you all know, when you require the government to pay for something, to design it, to implement it, it could take a while. And therefore, I've started working with the private sector here on a pilot project to basically digitize a select few land titles, put them on a blockchain server, and simulate the whole process. Our aim is to show proof of concept and take that to the government and international lending organizations and push for reform. When you hear politicians, you hear buzzwords. Buzzwords like technology adoption, technological hub, master plan, digitization. But no one's going to tell you what it means. I stand here with a plan that can be costed and implemented, and a plan that will unlock billions of dollars of dead capital in a country that needs it so desperately. Thank you.